My name is Daniel. I'm a night shift nurse. Not glamorous, trust me, but it pays the bills, and I'm hoping to move to days soon, once a few of my co-workers retire. My wife Claire stays home with our 3-year-old Mason, and for the most part, life is quiet, normal, safe, until it wasn't. It was just after 3 in the morning when my phone buzzed. Mason's baby monitor had picked up sound and movement. Not a big deal. He's 3 now, sleeps through the night usually. Probably sneezed, I figured. I opened the app just to check, and that's when I saw them, Claire and Mason, sitting on his bed together, both upright, both perfectly still, both staring directly up at the camera. The night vision turned everything black and white, so their eyes looked pale, almost white, like 2 faces caught in the flash of a photograph that never should have been taken. They weren't moving, not a twitch, not a fidget, just breathing, just staring. I told myself it was nothing. I really did. I closed the app and called Claire. It rang a couple times before she answered, voice thick with sleep, clearly just woken up. Hello? That slow, confused hello you only get when someone's been deep under, not the voice of someone who'd been sitting awake in a child's bedroom 30 seconds ago. Hey, you guys okay? Huh? Yeah, Mason came in maybe 15 minutes ago, said he was scared, so I told him he could sleep with Mama. I paused. Wait, so you 2 are in your bed right now? Yeah, I fell back asleep pretty fast. Why? Is everything okay? Everyone keeps waking me up. A little annoyed, groggy, completely normal. I put her on speaker, opened the app again, and my stomach dropped. They were still there. Claire and Mason, sitting on Hesh's bed, staring up at the camera. Same blank expressions, same eerie white eyes in the night vision, same slow, steady breathing. Claire, I said carefully, I'm looking at Mason's camera right now. I see you and him sitting on his bed. What? No, we're in our bed. I know what you're telling me, but I'm looking at it right now. She went quiet. I heard the rustle of sheets as she grabbed her phone and pulled up the app herself. And then I heard it, this gasp. Not a little surprised gasp, a deep, guttural, terrified gasp, like she had sucked every last molecule of air out of the room into her lungs all at once. Then the line went dead. I called back immediately. No answer. Again, no answer. Again. 4 minutes of calling with no answer. I want you to understand, 4 minutes felt like 40 years. When she finally called back, she was hysterical, crying so hard I couldn't make out a single word. I told her to slow down just for a second. She managed to get it out. She was in the car. She'd seen what was on the camera, grabbed Mason, ran downstairs, ran out the front door, didn't even close the garage behind her. She was already driving to her parents' house. Something was in my house, something that looked exactly like my family. We have code words. I know that sounds ridiculous, but Claire and I are huge sci-fi fans, always have been. We joked years ago about making up a verification system, you know, just in case. Pod people movies, body snatcher stuff. We'd made up a little 3-part story that we'd take turns reciting, a different part each, and we'd even taught Mason his piece. He always giggled when we practiced it, thought it was some silly game. That night, for the first time in our lives, we actually used them. She said her lines. Mason said his, giggling like always. I said mine. We were all ourselves, real. I'd never once actually thought we'd need those words. She got to her parents safely. I stayed at work for the remaining 4 hours of my shift, checking the camera every few minutes, and every single time, they were still there, still sitting, still staring. I started watching closely, looking for patterns, the blinking. If this was some kind of looped recording, the blinks would be rhythmic, timed, predictable. But they weren't. They blinked randomly, the way real people blink. And as the hours crept by, I watched the light slowly change in Mason's curtains. The sun was coming up. This was live. Whatever was sitting on my son's bed had been there all night. My co-worker Ryan is a firm believer in the paranormal. I pulled him aside and showed him the feed. His first words were, and I quote, "That is creepy as all hell." not helpful, but he wanted to go over and check it out. I said absolutely not. He said we should at least go to the house, even if we stayed outside. I wanted to close the garage door anyway, so I agreed. We walked the perimeter first. Curtains all drawn, couldn't see anything. I went to hit the garage opener, and that's when it hit me. This overwhelming pull, like I just had to know what was in there. What was it? Why did it look like my family? What did it want? Ryan and I went inside. The house was silent in a way I've never experienced before. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence, like the air itself was holding its breath. We stopped at the bottom of the stairs, and I pulled up the camera, still there, both of them, staring up. Ryan put his foot on the first step. "Stop," I said out loud, louder than I meant to. "Forget this. We're leaving, now." And that's when we heard it, a creak, from upstairs, from Mason's room, that specific, loud, unmistakable creak from that one board right in the middle of his floor. The one Claire and I always jokingly said we'd never fix, because it would warn us if he ever tried to sneak out as a teenager. We were out of that house in under 2 seconds. Out on the street, I looked at my phone. Now only not Mason was on the bed. Not Claire was gone from the camera, somewhere else in the house. When we'd been standing at the bottom of those stairs, she'd been somewhere we couldn't see. Before we drove away, I checked the camera one more time. Not Claire was back, sitting next to Not Mason, both staring up, blinking slowly. That was 4 days ago. They hadn't moved, not a single millimeter. On day 6, I called the police. I told the dispatcher there were intruders in my house. Didn't mention the part about them looking like my family. I wasn't ready for that conversation. 2 units were dispatched. My buddy Ryan came with me again, and yes, I was carrying. I have a concealed carry permit and had my 1911 on me. I also had something extra in the trunk that I wasn't going to mention to the cops. Ryan and I beat them to the house. When they arrived, I explained the situation, pulled up the camera, FaceTimed Claire so they could see she was safe, clearly not inside. The officers looked at each other like I was unstable, but the camera feed was undeniable. Ryan had an idea. He went around back, and while I turned the volume all the way up on the app, he tossed a small pebble at Mason's window. There was a 1-second delay on the camera feed, but through my phone speaker, we heard the soft tick of the pebble hitting glass, and not Claire moved. For the first time since this all started, she moved, just slightly. She turned her head toward the window, then turned back to the camera. "Okay," one of the officers said quietly. "This is live." They told Ryan and me to stay outside. Both officers went in through the garage, radioed dispatch they were entering, and disappeared into my house. 10 seconds later, the camera went out. I can't describe the feeling. My stomach turned inside out. I popped the trunk, grabbed the rifle, and ran inside. Ryan right behind me. We heard it before we even got to the stairs. A sound coming from upstairs, low, guttural, something between a howl and a scream, not human. Then gunshots. Then a voice cut off mid-sentence over the radio. I ran up the stairs. I'm not going to walk you through everything I saw at the top of those stairs. Some things you can't unknow. Both officers were gone, and in Mason's room, not Claire was on the floor, not Mason was still. The room smelled like copper, and something else I couldn't name. Not Claire looked at me from the floor, her voice a perfect match for my wife's. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "Please, I wanted more kids. I can't die now." I fell to my knees. I knew this wasn't Claire, but every word, every inflection was hers. "It's not her, man." Ryan's voice behind me, calm and steady. "Look at the blood. It's yellow. It's not your family." He was right. The blood on the floor was yellow, not red, yellow. I'd been so overwhelmed, I hadn't even noticed. I aimed. My hands were shaking badly. Not Claire stopped begging. Her expression changed. And then this sound started coming from somewhere deep in her throat. That same horrible, inhuman howl, and something dark began pushing out from between her lips. Something that moved like a tentacle. I fired. I found out later that Ryan had gone downstairs to meet the wave of officers who were pouring in. I was standing in the hallway, lightheaded, when my bedroom door opened and out walked me, not me, wearing exactly what I was wearing, looking exactly like me. Its right arm turned black and shifted into something that moved like a squid's limb. Before I could react, it drove that arm through my abdomen, then stabbed me in the left leg. I hit the floor. The rifle was gone, but I still had my sidearm. I got a shot into its knee. As it dropped, I put 2 more into its torso, and then 1 final shot, clean to the face. Its blood was yellow too. I passed out on that hallway floor. The tourniquet I made from my belt and the shirt I packed into my stomach wound. That's what kept me alive long enough for EMS to arrive. Being a nurse probably saved my life that night. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. An infection almost took me. My wife was furious. We're okay now, but that's a whole different story. About a week into my stay, men in suits came to see me. Government, they said FBI. I have my doubts. They asked me everything, wanted to know every detail about not my family. The police chief and the county coroner were both present. They made it very clear, this does not go public. A few days later, a bouquet of flowers arrived at my hospital room with no name on the card. The envelope inside read, "We don't know what they are. They have the same organs we do, but arranged differently, and what's red and pink inside us is green and yellow inside them. They're humanoid. The government believes they may be extraterrestrial. Destroy this letter immediately." I stared at those words for a long time. We're not going back to the house. We can't. A government cleanup crew came through, disguised as a private company, with no web presence, no reviews, nothing. The house will go on the market eventually. We'll take a loss. It is what it is. I've gone back over it 100 times in my head. If they were demons or something supernatural, gunfire shouldn't have worked. That makes me think they were something else, something real, something physical. Creatures that could copy us down to the last detail, but bled a different color and kept their organs in different places. What I can't figure out is why they just sat there for days. They didn't try to run, didn't try to take over our lives, didn't try to leave. They just sat on my son's bed and stared up at the camera, like they were waiting. For what? I still don't know. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to. If you see something that looks like your family but feels wrong, trust that feeling, because whatever was in my house looked perfectly like the people I love most in this world, and it wasn't them, not even close. It started on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where nothing feels wrong, where the light comes in soft through the blinds and the coffee is hot and the world feels normal. I was getting ready for work, same as always, when I got a phone call. A man named Mr. Burke. He said he was calling on behalf of a pharmaceutical company, a new one. Said they'd been reviewing cases like mine and that they had something that could help. Now, here's the thing you need to understand. I had been given 6 months to live. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, spreading fast, nothing the doctors could do. So when a stranger calls and says he has a cure, you don't really ask a lot of questions. You say yes, and that's exactly what I did. Something felt off about him though. Even then, I just couldn't name it. The company was called Artilex Pharmaceuticals. Never heard of them before. Couldn't find them anywhere online. But Burke had all the right answers, all the right paperwork. He explained the procedure, a simple surgery, followed by a single injection of their new chemotherapy drug. Experimental, he said, not yet FDA approved, free of charge for patients who matched the criteria. My options were die slowly from the cancer or take the gamble on the operating table. I signed everything and showed up to the hospital 2 weeks later, and then everything went wrong. I woke up, not in the recovery room, not groggy and confused after the surgery. I woke up during it. I could hear every word they said, every single word, but I couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't scream, couldn't even twitch a finger. Incision time 9:45, a voice said firmly, somewhere above my head. My head, not my abdomen. They weren't near the cancer. They were inside my skull, A sharp, searing pain shot through the back of my head, and I felt something warm trickling down my neck. I heard them talking about pressure, about bleeding, about cauterizing the wound. The smell of my own burning flesh filled my nose, and I couldn't do a single thing about it. Then came the drill, loud, vibrating, cutting through bone. I will never forget that sound for as long as I live. And then, silence. The pain stopped, just like that, which makes sense actually, because the brain has no pain receptors. So when they got past the skull, I could only feel a vague pressure, hear soft, wet sounds as they moved around inside my head, and then a voice said, "Is the device charged yet?" A device. They put a device inside my brain. Then came a high-pitched tone, a violent jolt, and darkness, total darkness. I woke up in a hospital bed. A smiling nurse told me everything had gone great. A doctor named Ethan came in with a syringe full of a dark red liquid and told me this was the last part of the treatment, to kill off the remaining cancer cells, he said. I let him inject me, and within days, I was cured completely. Against every odd, against every prognosis, the cancer was gone. But the nightmare wouldn't leave me alone. I started going through the documents they'd given me, 50 pages, and not a single mention of Artilex Pharmaceuticals anywhere in them. Not one. The phone number went straight to a busy signal. Every search I ran online came back empty. It was like the company didn't exist, had never existed. I tried to move on. I really did. I went back to work. My boss, a good man named Daniel Harrison, was thrilled to have me back. We sat down in his office to talk about my return, and that's when it started. A sound, low at first, barely noticeable, like static feedback inside my own skull, getting louder and louder. "Do you hear that?" I asked him. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then Harrison started talking about his own past, said he'd once been given a terminal diagnosis too, said some guy showed up out of nowhere with a miracle cure, some company whose name he couldn't quite remember, something starting with A, Art, something, Artilex Pharmaceuticals, I said. His face lit up. "Yes, that's the one. How'd you know?" I excused myself. I walked out of that office. The moment I stepped outside, the sound stopped, and the next day, Harrison was dead. Brain hemorrhage, they said. Unexplained aneurysm, gone, just like that. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating much. I kept turning the pieces over in my head, trying to make them fit, and a few months later, at the gym of all places, it happened again. The sound came back, loud, immediate, unbearable. I looked to my left, and there was a man in his 40s on the treadmill next to me. He noticed my expression, started to say something, took one step toward me, and collapsed. Dead. Brain hemorrhage. I went to 3 different doctors after that, begged for scans, for answers, for anything. The first 2 thought I was losing my mind. The third agreed to a CT scan. He came back into the room with a strange look on his face. "You really should have told me you had an implant," he said. There it was, right there in the scan, a diamond-shaped metal object sitting deep inside my brain, close to the brainstem, too close to safely remove, he said. And the scar on the back of my head that I'd never even noticed. Small, precise, expertly hidden. Whatever they put inside me, it's still there. Here's what I know now. The sound only happens when I'm near someone else who's been through the same thing. Harrison was a patient years ago. The man at the gym, probably one too. And every time the sound starts and I don't walk away fast enough, they die. Like something in the device is triggered, like it overloads them somehow. I don't know what Artilex is. I don't know if they're a company or a program or something else entirely. I don't know why they cured my cancer only to put something foreign inside my head. I don't know if I'm being monitored or used, or if I'm just a piece in something so much larger I can't even see the edges of it. What I do know is that I'm not the only one. There are others out there, walking around cancer-free, thinking they got lucky, not knowing what's sitting inside their skulls, not knowing what it does, not knowing why. So if you ever get a call from a man named Burke, If someone you've never heard of offers you a miracle cure when you've got nothing left to lose, just hang up. They are not trying to save you. I'm still not sure what they're trying to do. And honestly, I think that's the part that scares me most. It started about 6 months ago. My neighbor, a sweet woman named Linda, knocked on my door and handed me a pair of tiny pink baby shoes, glitter on the toes, little sequined flowers on the sides. She was so excited. I smiled, said thank you, and when she left I stood in my hallway holding these shoes, completely confused. I don't have a baby. I have never been pregnant, not once in my life. I figured it was a mix-up. I'm not exactly one-of-a-kind looking. Short, dark hair, hazel eyes. Probably some other girl in the neighborhood just had a baby. I'm from the South, so I just smiled and nodded and didn't correct anyone. I'm too polite for my own good, always have been. But then the gifts kept coming. A crib, a swing, tiny clothes in pastel colors, diapers, formula. All of it just appearing. Left at my door, handed to me at the grocery store, tucked into my shopping bags without me ever putting them there. And I kept smiling, kept nodding. Oh, she's wonderful. Sleeping through the night. I said it without thinking. Like the words just came out on their own. Then something happened that I still can't shake. A woman I'd seen at the coffee shop a few times started talking to me about a playdate, her 9-month-old and my, apparently 5-month-old. I brushed it off the first time. But the second time she brought it up, she pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. She said, "Aren't they just precious? Your little girl has the most beautiful blue eyes. That dress really makes them pop." I looked at the photo. There was one baby in it, chubby, dark hair, dark eyes, red shirt and blue shorts. That was it, just one baby. I went home and opened my bedroom closet. There was a light blue dress, folded neatly on top of everything else. I called my mom a few weeks after that. We don't talk much. She picked up and we did the usual small talk. And then she asked, "How are you two doing?" I hesitated. I asked what she meant. She got a little cold with me and said she knew she hadn't been in touch much, but she did care about me and her grandbaby. Before I could respond, she told me to give Holly her love and hung up. Here's the thing about that name, Holly. It's the name I picked out years ago, back when I was a teenager reading Breakfast at Tiffany's for the first time. I never told anyone. It was just mine, something I kept to myself. After I hung up, I walked into my bedroom. The crib and the changing table were set up neatly by the window. I did not put them there. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, just staring at them. I walked over to the changing table and caught myself right before I walked into it. I stopped and I looked down at my shin. There was already a bruise there, a real one from before. How many times had I walked in here without remembering? My neighbor across the street asked about Holly one morning while we were both getting our mail. I told her Holly was happy, sleeping well, and she said she'd heard her screaming the previous night when I came home. Said she'd been surprised I got her down at all. I smiled and went inside and stood in my kitchen for a long time. I heard something from my bedroom, a small sound. I told myself it was nothing, got a cup of water, heard it again over the sound of the tap, and thought, Holly must be awake. I walked in and looked at the crib. There was a stuffed elephant inside it. I picked it up and looked at it and thought it was adorable. No wonder someone got this for Holly. I set it back down and went to take a sip of water and realized I was holding a baby bottle. Then I looked down. I was holding my cup. I stood there, both things true at once, and neither of them making any sense. And for one horrible second I thought, Mum brain, I don't have a baby. What was I just thinking? I kicked the crib over and over until the wood splintered. I shoved the changing table onto its side. I threw everything into the closet and slammed the door and told myself I was done. I was done pretending. I was done going along with it. The next morning I went to get coffee. and a woman sat down across from me and asked in a low, gentle voice if I was doing okay. She said new mothers often go through dark patches. I told her I was not a new mother. Then a man came rushing in and leaned down and whispered that I had left my kid in the car, in her car seat. I ran outside. I unlocked the back door and looked in. Nothing. No car seat. No child. I drove home and sat on my bed and opened the photo on my phone again. The one the woman had shown me at the coffee shop. One chubby baby in a red shirt. That's all I see. But everyone else sees too. Everyone else sees Holly. Bright blue eyes, light blue dress. She does look so pretty in that dress. I'm still sitting on my bed as I write this. I need to finish getting this down before. I just need a minute. Holly just started crying from the other room. I should go check on her. My dad had this thing he did when I was growing up. Instead of grounding me or taking away my games, he'd tell me a story. Not a lecture, not a warning, a story. The kind that stuck to the inside of your brain like a bad dream you couldn't shake. I was 10 years old, sitting on the living room floor with my laptop open, headset on, completely locked into a Minecraft server. The chat was flying. I was in my own little world, and then I heard him. His footsteps, slow, deliberate. He sat down right next to me on the floor, which was weird because he never did that. He just crouched down beside me like he had all the time in the world. "Hey buddy," he said quietly. "We need to have a chat about internet safety." I pulled off my headset, and I already knew what was coming. That look on his face, that calm, almost too calm expression. "Dad," I said, "is this gonna be another one of your cheesy, scary stories?" He faked a wounded look, put his hand over his heart. "What? I thought you liked my cautionary tales." And then he grinned. That grin. I knew that grin. I'd grown up hearing his stories about kids who wandered too close to witches in the woods, or opened the wrong doors, or talked to the wrong strangers. I used to pull my blanket up to my nose and beg him to keep going. But I was 10 now. 10. I folded my arms and told him so. "Dad, I can handle it. If you're gonna tell a story, make it really, really scary." He squinted at me for a long moment, and then he said, "Okay, I'll try." He started with a boy named Colby, a regular kid, maybe my age, who spent a lot of time online. Colby made friends on game servers, on message boards, the way we all did. And one of those friends was a kid named Helper23. They'd been talking for months. Same taste in games, same sense of humor. Helper23 felt like a real friend, the kind you trust. So when Colby's birthday was coming up, and Helper23 offered to mail him a present, Colby didn't think twice. He gave Helper23 his home address. As long as Helper23 promised not to tell any grown-ups, it would be fine, right? My dad paused. He looked at me. "Do you think that was a good idea?" "No," I said immediately. I was already leaning in. That night, Colby lay in bed, feeling the guilt crawl up through his chest. It had started small, but by the time he put on his pajamas, it had grown into something he couldn't ignore. He decided he was going to tell his parents. Whatever the punishment was, it was worth getting it off his chest. He waited in bed, listening to the house settle around him. The washing machine rattling somewhere down the hall, branches dragging against the window outside, his baby brother making soft sounds from the nursery down the hall. And then, footsteps, his dad's footsteps, coming down the hallway. "Hey, Dad," Colby called out. "I need to tell you something." And then my dad lowered his voice, just slightly, just enough. His dad appeared in the doorway, but something was wrong. The angle was wrong. The shadows cut across his face in a way that didn't make sense. His mouth didn't seem to be moving, and the eyes were just off. "Hey, yes, son," the voice came, strange, flat, like someone doing an impression of a father. "Are you okay, Dad?" Colby asked, his voice barely a whisper. He pulled the covers up. "Uh-huh," the figure hummed. Is Mom around?" And then a second head appeared in the doorway. just below the first one. "Here I am," sang a voice that was too high, too bright, wrong in every way. "Were you about to tell us about Helper 23? About the address you gave him?" Colby couldn't breathe. "He wasn't a kid," the voice continued, "sweet and terrible. He just pretended to be. And when he got our address, he came here. He came inside, and now..." That's when my dad paused, just for a second, just long enough for my brain to fill in the silence with something worse than whatever came next. A large man stepped into the doorway, holding 2 severed heads. I screamed. I actually screamed. My hands flew up over my face, and I could hear myself making these high, embarrassing sounds, but I couldn't stop. My dad kept going. The man in the story dropped the heads and moved into the room. Colby was screaming, and then, after a while, the screaming stopped, and somewhere down the hall, a baby started to cry. The man paused. He turned his head toward the sound. He'd never considered what else might be in the house. He followed the crying through the dark hallway and into the nursery. He picked the baby up. He'd never held one before. He moved toward the changing table to get a better look in the dim light. And as he held the baby, the crying stopped. The baby looked up at him and smiled. Something in the man cracked open. He stood there in the dark, bouncing the baby gently, the rage draining out of him like water through a drain. He wiped his hands carefully on the blanket. He stroked the baby's cheek. "Hey there, sweet little guy," he whispered. He walked out the front door, took the baby home, named him William, and raised him as his own. My dad finished the story. The room was quiet. I was breathing hard, trying to pull myself back together, and then I heard myself stammer out the words before I even understood why they scared me. "Dad, my name is William." He looked at me for a long moment, and then he gave me a slow dad wink and reached over and tousled my hair. "Of course it is, son." I ran upstairs. I don't even remember deciding to move. I just ran, and somewhere behind me, I heard him settling back onto the couch. I never gave my address to anyone online, not once, not ever, because every time I thought about it, I remembered that wink, that quiet, satisfied little wink, and the way he said it. "Of course it is, son." It started before I even moved in. My first day as a college freshman, and the older kids in the elevator were already whispering about it. Room 733, they had a nickname for it, one I'm not going to repeat. The kind of nickname that sticks to a place like smoke to curtains and never quite washes out. My roommate Cassie and I had been assigned to room 734, not one of the shiny new rooms in the south wing. No, we were in the older wing of Riley Hall, 7th floor, tucked right next to the room nobody talked about out loud, but everybody knew. I wasn't too worried at first. Cassie and I had been best friends since we were 5 years old. As long as we were together, I figured we could handle anything. We spent that first morning laughing, hanging posters, arguing over which side of the room was better. It felt like the beginning of something great. Then our resident advisor showed up. Her name was Bethany, and she floated into our room like a human confetti cannon, blonde, bubbly, and somehow completely unaware that she was about to ruin our afternoon. "Oh wow, you girls work fast," she said, picking up a drawing Cassie had done over the summer. She turned it sideways. "Is this the squid from that pirate movie?" Cassie looked up from her book with a stare that could strip paint. Bethany set the drawing down and kept talking, filling us in on hall policies, quiet hours, the usual. And then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned the corner room. "Oh, you don't want that one," she said breezily. "There were a couple of incidents in there. They're not assigning anyone to it. Anyway, guys aren't allowed on this floor after 11. And just like that, she clapped her hands, said nice to meet you, and bounced right back out the door. Cassie stared at the empty doorway. I hate her. Did you hear what she just dropped on us and walked away from? I'm calling her clueless Bethany. Cassie, seriously, incidents. Every campus has a dark history, Maya. Relax. Not in the same room, she sighed. It's not our room. We're fine. I looked at our window. Small, barely big enough to fit a person. Can you imagine climbing out of that thing? I said quietly. Cassie shot me a look. Maya, please don't. The corner room has windows on both walls. Big ones. Stop talking. I'm just saying. I will move out and leave you here alone if you don't stop. I laughed and let it go. But something about the way I felt standing near that window, I didn't forget it. We made friends fast, mostly because Cassie made friends the way other people breathe, effortlessly. By the end of September, she had a boyfriend, right on schedule. His name was Derek, and he was exactly the kind of guy you'd expect at a frat rush week. Nice enough, I guess. Life settled into a rhythm. Classes, study sessions, bad dining hall food. For a few weeks, room 734 felt normal. Then one night in early October, everything changed. I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. A low, grinding noise. I sat up in the dark, and I could see that Cassie was already awake, already staring at the wall with wide eyes. Slam. We both flinched. It was coming from next door, the corner room, the sound of a window being dragged open and then slammed shut, over and over, in the middle of the night. Who is in there? I whispered. Cassie shook her head slowly. Grind. Is someone messing with us? Like some kind of initiation. Initiation to what, Maya? Slam. I don't know. College? Cassie gave me a look. That was the dumbest thing you've ever said. I threw a pillow at her. Then you go tell them to stop. I'm an art major. You're pre-law. You go lay down the law. Absolutely not. Drined. We went back and forth like that, until I finally couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed, stomped down the hall, and knocked hard on the door to room 733. There was a small sign on it that said supply room. Nobody answered. The window sounds kept coming. I stepped back from the door, and that's when I noticed it. The room was padlocked. From the outside, there was no way anyone was in there. No way in, no way out. I backed away slowly and went back to our room. It's locked from the outside, I told Cassie. She stared at me. Then she rolled over. You should have been a drama major. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, from the street below, both windows in the corner room were wide open. I started watching those windows every day. They stayed open. And at night, lying in bed, I started hearing other things, soft sounds, like marbles rolling across a hardwood floor, a faint tapping on the other side of the wall. I told myself it was the building settling. Old buildings make sounds. That's just what they do. I almost convinced myself. Then one afternoon I was alone in the room, headphones in, finishing up notes on my laptop. I heard knocking. I pulled out my earbuds and called out, but no one answered. I called out again. I turned around. The hallway door was already open. I'd left it open for my boyfriend Noah, who was supposed to stop by. So who was knocking? I heard it again, behind me, from inside the closet. The closet that shared a wall with room 733. Cassie, if that's you, I swear to God. I crossed the room and grabbed the handle. Cassie, I am not laughing. I'm not laughing what? Her voice came from behind me, from the doorway. She was standing there with her backpack, looking at me like I'd grown a second head. I let go of the handle and stepped back. I thought you were in the closet, I said. Why would I be in the closet? Because someone was knocking from in there. Cassie walked over, threw open the closet door. Nothing but clothes and boxes. She gave me the look that said okay, but also, are you okay? I knew what I'd heard. That same week, Noah stopped by and mentioned room 733 on his own. Turns out the history of the place went deeper than clueless Bethany had let on. Not 2 incidents, not 3, 5, over 5 decades, all in that same room. Whatever is in there, Noah said quietly, it isn't friendly. Cassie, who had been rolling her eyes at all of it, went very still. 5. None of us said anything for a long time after that. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of whispering, not through the wall, in the room, low and close and impossible to make out, like someone speaking just below the edge of hearing. I looked over at Cassie. She was already awake, already staring at me. She pressed a finger to her lips. We listened. The whispering was coming from her side of the room. Her bed was against the shared wall, with 733. Never taken mouths of fools. Cassie leaned her ear toward the wall. The whispering stopped, and then a sound hit the other side so hard that Cassie recoiled, grabbing her ear. That was it for me. I went out into the hallway and beat on that door until my hand hurt. "This isn't funny anymore," I yelled. "Whoever is in there, come out." Silence. And then the doorknob started to turn. I backed up until I hit the opposite wall. The handle turned all the way down. Something pushed against the door from the inside, hard enough to make the wood groan. The locks held. After a moment, the pressure released. The handle slowly returned to center. I stood there in the dark hallway, heart slamming against my ribs, trying to process what I had just watched happen. I got down on the floor, pressed my face to the carpet, looked under the door. The room was full of old furniture, stacked chairs, rusted bed frames, a thick layer of dust over everything that looked like it hadn't been touched in 20 years. The two windows on the far wall, massive, much bigger than ours, were open as always. Moonlight cut across the floor, and then the moonlight disappeared, and something looked back at me, a large pale eye, inches from mine, on the other side of the door. I screamed loud enough to wake the entire floor. The next morning, Cassie and I both put in room transfer requests. We agreed on a rule. Neither of us would spend a night in that room alone. We started sleeping in other dorms, with friends, with our respective boyfriends. We came back during the day to get clothes and go. It felt like a solution. It wasn't. Noah suggested I talk to a group on campus that researched this kind of thing. I was skeptical, but desperate enough to try. Cassie came with me. We met with a kid named Spencer and 4 of his friends, who listened carefully, took a lot of notes, and then delivered their verdict with the gravity of a congressional hearing. "What you're dealing with, ladies, is a very angry ghost." Cassie looked at me. I looked at Cassie. We left. "They're playing Ghostbusters," Cassie said as we walked away, "and we're living The Exorcist." That was when I found Alice. She worked at resident services, and when I came in to follow up on our transfer requests, she pulled me aside. Turned out she had spent 2 years quietly researching the history of Riley Hall, 7th floor. She'd hit every dead end, but she knew more than anyone else we'd found. We sat in her dorm room that afternoon, and she walked me through everything she'd pieced together. 5 deaths over 3 decades, all in the same room, all alone at the time. The earliest one, a girl named Ellen, was the very first. Every few years, once the student body turned over and no one remembered, the university would quietly reassign the room. Then after the 5th death, they closed the entire north side of the 7th floor and built new rooms onto the south wing. "So it's been empty ever since?" I asked. "Until this year. You're the first people to live on that floor in over 20 years. What does it want?" Alice leaned back. "Something old, something that's been there a long time, waiting. It's smart, Maya, smarter than it looks. It doesn't come at you directly. It pulls you in. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be." She told me there was one person left on campus who had been there when it started, a man named Thomas, in the administration building. She'd tried to get to him before. He always found a way to disappear. We tried for 3 days. He slipped around us every time. Morning, lunch, evening, it didn't matter. The man moved like he knew we were coming. And then one morning we showed up, and the woman at the front desk told us flatly that Thomas had quit the day before. No notice. "Without him," Alice said as we stood outside in the cold. "I don't know where else to look." But that wasn't even the worst news that day. The worst news came in a voicemail. Cassie had left me a message the night before. She and Derek had gotten into a massive fight because his fraternity had decided as some kind of Halloween stunt to spend the night in the corner room. She was furious. She said she was too upset to go to Derek's place. She said she was going back to our dorm. I listened to the voicemail standing outside the admin building in the cold morning air, and my stomach dropped straight through the ground. Cassie had gone back, alone, the night before. Alice and I ran. I am not exaggerating when I say we ran across that entire campus. And when Riley Hall came into view, I stopped dead on the pavement, because for the first time since we'd moved in, the windows of the corner room were closed, and our window was open. The elevator ride to the 7th floor was the longest of my life. When the doors opened, the hallway was quiet, empty. I ran for our room. Through the door open, Cassie was standing at the window. There was a moment, just one, where she looked back at me, and her face, there was something in it. Something that looked like relief, like she'd been waiting for me, like maybe this wasn't over yet, but it was already over. She leaned forward just slightly, and she was gone. I couldn't move. I stood there, and I heard the screaming start from somewhere far below, and I still couldn't move. Alice was behind me, pulling me back from the window, and neither of us said a word. There were pictures all over the floor, drawings, Cassie's work. She was one of the most gifted artists I had ever known, and whatever she had spent the night creating, I could only look at a few before I had to look away. A single piece of paper slid out from under the closet door and came to rest near my foot. I picked it up. It was a drawing of the room, exactly as I was seeing it at that moment. Cassie's perspective. The closet door cracked open in the background, and in the crack of the darkness inside the closet, something looking back. I set the paper down and looked at the closet. The door was open, just slightly, just like in the drawing. I squinted, trying to see inside. I could just start to make out the shape of something long and pale, looking back when Alice grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. "We need to go, right now." I never went back into that room. My parents came and packed my things. I finished the semester in an apartment off campus. The following spring I transferred to a school in another state, and I didn't look back. Every night for years I dreamed of Cassie at that window, the way she looked back at me, that 1 second of hope on her face. I still dream about it. It's been 9 years. Every fall, without fail, I call resident services to ask which dorms are open for new student assignments, just to check. Riley is always on the list. The 7th floor is always closed. This year I called later than usual. Life got in the way. The man who answered put me on hold for a while, and when he came back, his voice was almost cheerful. "You actually have great timing," he said. "We just got the approval this morning." "Approval for what?" I asked slowly. "We're opening the 7th floor." My husband, Nathan, had a thing for bad jokes. Dad jokes, specifically. He started telling them long before we even thought about having kids, which probably should have told me something. But honestly, it was one of the reasons I fell for him. When we first moved in together, Nathan had this running bit. Every single time we said, "I love you," every single time, he'd reach over, pinch my cheek, and say, "Bzzzt, go make your own breakfast." We didn't even eat breakfast. That was the whole joke. He just liked ruining the moment, then watching me groan and melt anyway. And God help me, it worked. Every single time. So when I shuffled into the kitchen one Tuesday morning, still half asleep, eyes barely open, I wasn't exactly primed to notice something was off. "Can you see me smile?" I glanced up from the counter. "What?" Nathan blinked. "What? Thought you said something." He shook his head slowly. I let it go. My imagination, probably. I hadn't had coffee yet. But then, as I was pouring my mug, he said it again, quieter this time, almost under his breath. "Can you see me smile?" I rolled my eyes. Here we go. I figured this was another one of those bits that takes 2 weeks to be funny. That was always how Nathan's humor worked. Terrible at first. Relentless commitment. And then suddenly one day you're on the floor laughing, and you can't explain why. so I played along. I gave him nothing. I kissed him on the cheek, told him he had a sore under his nose that looked nasty, and headed off to work. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, the phrase started showing up everywhere, mid-sentence, out of context, like a hiccup. We'd be watching TV, and he'd say it. We'd be grocery shopping over the phone, and right in the middle of asking if we needed paper towels, "Can you see me smile?" and then continue like nothing happened. I stopped reacting entirely. Classic Nathan, I thought. He'd get bored eventually. But the sore under his nose wasn't getting better. If anything, it was spreading. Then came dinner. A Tuesday, maybe a week in. Nathan was twirling pasta onto his fork, completely calm, and then he looked right at me, slowly, deliberately. And he stretched his mouth into this wide, unnatural grin, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Can you see me smile?" I set my fork down. "Okay, enough. It's been a week and it's not funny." "What are you talking about?" "The smile thing. The constant smile thing, Nathan." He tilted his head, genuinely confused looking. "Huh? Don't. Just admit the bit didn't land and drop it." We went back and forth for a while, him claiming he had no idea what I was referring to, me getting more and more irritated. And just when the tension hit its peak, he goes, "The only bits that land around here are the ones about airports. Still don't know what you're talking about though." I half laughed in spite of myself. That was so Nathan. Later that night, I was soaking in the bath, cucumber slices over my eyes, music low. The door at the far end of the bathroom creaked open. "Nathan." No answer. Another creak. I slid upright, caught the slices, looked around. Nothing. Steam. The faint drip of the faucet. A draft from somewhere. I settled back. Fine. Old house. Whatever. But when I got out and wiped the mirror, I saw it. A smiley face drawn into the fog, with 5 words underneath. "Can you see me smile?" I went cold. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was Nathan being Nathan, taking the bit too far in that way only he could. I left him to sleep. We'd talk in the morning, except I didn't sleep. Something about that face in the mirror kept pulling at me, turning over and over in my chest, like a key that won't quite catch the lock. At some point, close to 1 in the morning, I startled awake from a dream, the kind where you're falling and you jerk right before hitting the ground. I opened my eyes, and Nathan was directly above me, not lying beside me, not rolling over. He was hovering, elbows and knees suspended just over my body, his face pressed nose to nose with mine, completely still, completely silent. I bit down on a scream. His sore had spread. Whatever had started under his nostril had gone across his upper lip, down his chin, red, raw, oozing in places he'd clearly been picking at without knowing. His eyes were open, staring straight into mine. What the hell? I shoved him hard, and he rolled to his side of the bed, facing the wall, and immediately, I swear to you, started fake snoring. I punched the back of his head, not hard enough to hurt him. Okay, maybe a little hard. You just gave me an actual heart attack. He turned over, playing innocent, corners of his mouth twitching like he was fighting a smile. Ow, what was that for? I was sleeping. You were not sleeping. He started to protest. Then a cough hit him, low, rattling, dragging up from somewhere deep in his chest. He bolted for the hallway. And see a dermatologist, I called after him. I barely slept the rest of the night. By morning, his side of the bed was still empty. I found him in the bathroom, standing at the sink, staring at his own reflection, and using his forefingers, he was pulling the corners of his mouth open, just stretching it, holding the grin in place. His gums had gone gray. Nathan, nothing. Nathan, look at me. He turned his head, slowly, and he was still holding his mouth open. I called my mom from the parking lot at work and vented for 20 minutes. She said to sit him down and be honest about how much it was bothering me. She was right. Nathan was goofy, but he wasn't cruel. We could sort this out. I came home that evening ready to talk, found him hunched over the coffee table in the living room, scribbling furiously into a notebook. Hey, can we talk? Nothing. I moved closer, reached out and gently took the notebook. He snapped upright, fast, startling, and grabbed it back before I could read more than a glimpse. But I caught enough, page after page after page, the same 5 words, over and over, in handwriting that got tighter and more frantic toward the bottom. Can you see me smile? Can you see me smile? Can you see me smile? He was grinning at me now, that horrible wide grin, too big, too still. He took 1 step forward, arms slightly out, and his voice came out wet and thick. Can you see me smile? There was blood on his lip. He'd been chewing it, gnawing at it without realizing. Can you see me smile? Louder now. A cough burst out of him, spraying saliva. He kept walking toward me. I backed into the hallway. Nathan, stop. Can you see me smile? He followed me out the front door, across the walkway, all the way to my car. When I got inside and slammed the door, he put both palms on the window and drummed them. Then he leaned in close, breathed fog onto the glass, and began writing backward with 1 finger, C-A-N. I threw it into reverse and got out of there. My eyes were so swollen from crying by the time I reached my mum's house that I could barely see. I called the police. They listened patiently and told me my husband was making jokes. I called a paramedic non-emergency line and described the sores on his face. They told me to have him see a doctor. Nobody was coming. Nobody thought this was what I knew it was. Nathan didn't respond to any of my texts, didn't pick up the phone. I lay in my mom's guest room that night, unable to stop thinking about him alone in that house, getting worse, doing something awful to himself. Mom said to wait, to bring someone with me, but by 2 a.m. I couldn't take it anymore. He was my husband, and something was wrong. I pulled into the driveway just after 2. The house was completely dark. When I pushed open the front door, I smelled it immediately. Copper, thick and sweet, the kind of smell that sits in the back of your throat. Thuds from upstairs, slow, rhythmic. I climbed the stairs. When I hit the landing and turned on the light, I had to grab the wall to keep from dropping to my knees. Every inch of the hallway, floor to ceiling, both sides, covered in those 5 words, scrawled over and over in increasingly frantic handwriting. Can you see me smile? And then I noticed the color was changing. Black toward the bottom of the stairway, dark reddish brown toward the bathroom door, which was cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to escape. I already knew what color came next. I pushed open the bathroom door. Nathan was crouched in the corner, back to me, completely still, except for 1 arm dragging up the tiles, slow and deliberate, painting 4 letters, S-E-E. He'd stop, lower his hand, and replenish whatever he was using to write with, a thick, dark liquid that clung to his fingers and dripped off his knuckles. It took me 3 full seconds to understand what I was looking at. He was writing in his own blood. He was coughing it up into his hands and painting the walls with it. Nathan, I whispered. The door creaked behind me. His head lifted. I ran. I made it to the top of the stairs before he hit the backs of my legs like a linebacker. Both of us went airborne for half a second, and then we were falling, the stairs crashing against my spine, my shoulder, the back of my skull. When it stopped, I was flat on my back in the downstairs hall, 2 blurry light fixtures spinning above me. And then Nathan's face appeared, both of them doubling and merging in my vision. His mouth was wrong. Something was wrong with his face. The skin around his lips had been worn down, torn, chewed, scratched away. Tendons and jaw muscles were visible, tightening and releasing like something mechanical. The lips were gone. The cheeks were hanging in loose, dark flaps. He was grinning because the grin was all that was left. He pinned me down and put his face inches from mine, and those 5 words came out in a low, wet groan, over and over, rattling up from somewhere that didn't sound human anymore. I got a hand free. I got to the kitchen. I grabbed a knife off the counter and I screamed at him to stop. He didn't stop. He lunged, and I didn't let him reach me. When the paramedics arrived, they both went pale. One of them stepped outside. The police officer who took my statement at the station kept having to pause and compose himself. I told them everything, as calmly as I could manage, though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the cup of water they'd given me. Afterward, Mum drove me back to her place. I sobbed into her shoulder on the couch for a long time. I kept licking my lips without meaning to. My mouth felt dry, scratchy, like the inside was lined with something rough. My stomach was turning over in slow, nauseating circles. Eventually, an urge to yawn hit me. Enormous, unstoppable, jaw-cracking. Mum pulled back, stared at me. Her face went white. "What?" I asked, confused. "What's wrong?" She reached up, slowly, and wiped something off my cheek.